Right. Let's get this up here. Okay. Maybe if I can get this to work. There we go. All right. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. Hi, team.
Awesome. Hi. All right. Oop, Lindsay, I didn't quite hear you there. Give me a second here.
Are
Oop.
you able to hear me now?
Yeah, now we're up and going. All right.
Thank you so much for your patience. I'm sorry for the delay.
Oh,
My
no
computer
worries.
is a million years old and it's just completely I'm on my phone. So I'm sorry if I'm shaky, but my computer just will not. It just won't. It just begs to
No,
be.
I
I love
completely
a shaky Zoom. It
understand.
gives a little like found footage vibe.
Yeah, usually I'm the one causing the technical difficulties, so I completely understand. I have been there, done that. But yeah, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. The event tonight is yours. You have the floor. Basically, I'm just here as your virtual host to introduce you to and to let you guys talk. We can go for like an hour or so, or if it tends to run over, and we have a good conversation going, you're totally allowed to go for that as well. But yeah, so we are going to get going here. Just pull up the description. There we go. All right. So tonight we have Lindsay King-Miller, author of This Is My Body, that just came.
Woo!
Yeah. Previously, writer of Ask a Queer Chick, including the column and the book, published in 2016, as well as the Z Word. And we also have joining us in conversation today, Sarah Gailey, author of so many things, Echo Wife, the God, sorry, my brain today. But the upcoming title that I'm excited about is Spread Me as well. But today we're talking about This Is My Body, and joining us with Sarah Gailey, also author of Spread Me, Echo Wife, and so many other amazing stories. But I'll stop yapping now and let you guys take the floor.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Book Loft, for having us here today. And thank you, Lindsay, for letting me hop on board the hype train for This Is My Body. I have been standing on the platform ready to board this train since I got the arc in my inbox some time ago and blasted through this book in like two sittings. I think I took a break to sleep. But honestly, it is so phenomenal. It's a petrifying book, and I'm so excited to talk to you about it today. Oh
Oh
my
my
God.
God. Okay, hold on. Um, because now my uh computer has just decided to connect
Oh,
some.
yeah, there's two of you, and we're getting a little echo, so I'm getting kind of like the demonic possession experience of what I think you'd probably sound like if there was an illicit creature speaking through you. Well, audience, me and you, we're gonna have such a good time today. I've got a list of really hideously ugly questions for Lindsay about this book that have been floating around in my brain since I read it. You can get your copy from the Book Loft and should.
Yes, we do have autographed copies as well, up in our main room, just right up the stairs to the right when you walk in. And please get a copy. It is incredible. I tore through it in just a couple of sittings. So
Mhm. You know what's great about autographed copies? What I love when people do is they'll bring me autographed copies that they bought at a bookstore and they'll bring it to a later author event and give it to me to sign again. And I love getting to do it. I have one person who's brought me the same book four times to sign. And it's really fun because it's like you don't have to be, I mean, obviously you should buy every single book that Lindsay writes and publishes, but you can also continue engaging with the work over and over throughout time. I don't know, I think it's neat.
I
I
completely.
also really love when people bring me other authors' books to sign because they don't know who I am and they mix me up with Anna Lee Newitz.
Seriously? Wow, that is
Oh my God.
oh my goodness.
Annalie and I did, we were at the same event once. We did like a big panel and then we went and did a signing. I think it was a library conference and they put us side by side. And so we had two lines next to each other. Um, and they sort of blended together into one big line and people would come to the end and like fork off to get signed by one of us. But we look, I guess we look like just similar. We have the same cartoon visual brand that people, it was 50-50 which of us would get whose book. They kind of were just doing like book roulette for us to sign. Lindsay, it looks like there's only one of you.
I hope so.
Yeah, we did it.
Yes. Thank
Go
you so
team.
much for your patience. And thank you so much for being here. I'm like, my frustration with technology is just barely helping me like keep my fangirl explosion under control. I'm pretty sure I have read all of your books.
Oh my
Um,
goodness. I'm so
I
sorry. There's too many.
no,
Same
there could be more. I wouldn't mind if there were more. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I will not go on because I don't want to be weird, but just having you be part of this event is a tremendous honor and means a lot to me. So thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. And the Admiration Society is very much mutual. You are a stupendous horror author, and I really loved getting to dive in to This Is My Body, which we should invite our audience to do now. So, given our kind of schedule that we're looking at, we had discussed you doing a reading to hopefully petrify people who are watching this ahead of our conversation. Do you still want to jump in and do that?
Yeah, why don't I, because we're running a little behind schedule due to my refusal to buy a laptop that's not made of duct tape and dreams. Why don't I'll just read the prologue, which is short, and then we'll jump into the conversation. And that also will minimize the amount of time that I have to try to point the camera at myself and also read off of my book.
You got this. Okay, let's go. I want to get this book out of the author's mouth. I'm so ready. I've been hype all day.
All right, so this is my body. This is the beautiful cover by Alyssa Flanagan, which I love so much. And here is the prologue. The girl was handcuffed to the bed. For hours, she had been screaming, but now her voice was gone and she merely panted, exhausted, but not resigned. Her eyes were huge and sunken in her pale, strained face. Her white nightgown was soaking wet, and so was the bare mattress underneath her. She shivered in the breeze from the open window. Lit by candles arrayed on the dresser, her skin seemed to writhe from underneath like something was crawling inside her. The small bedroom felt crowded with 5 people in it. The girl's parents sat near the head of the bed, clutching each other's hands, not touching their daughter. In the far corner, a woman recited the rosary in a low, droning voice. Beneath the monotonous Hail Marys, the girl's parents whispered to each other. The immobilized girl breathed loudly, but said nothing. Neither did the man at the foot of her bed, wearing the black vestments of a priest. His hands were clasped before him, and his eyes fixed, blue and ferocious, on the girl. Bridget watched from the hallway, her eye pressed to the gap in the doorframe where the wind whistled through. It was the dead of night, and she should have been long asleep, but when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the demon waiting to be cast out. She didn't want to miss the miracle. The girl on the bed squirmed in her bonds. Her wrists and ankles were horribly bruised and abraded, blood seeping onto the dingy gray white of the mattress in a sickening stigmata. Bridget remembered the soft curves of her body when her parents first brought her to this house. Now, only a few days later, skin hung from her bones like a secondhand jacket. too tight in some places, too loose in others. Her cheekbones and brow loomed, shadows swirling beneath. Her lips were chapped dull white, except in the corners of her mouth, dark red with more old blood. Bridget thought she was the most beautiful girl in the world. Father Angus, Bridget's uncle, raised his hands, and the parents fell silent. Out in the hall, Bridget held her breath. Only Bridget's mother, Adelaide, continued speaking, endless streams of prayer without pause or inflection. Demon, Father Angus commanded over his sister's recitation. Leave this child's body. Release her soul. The girl spat at him, or tried, but her mouth was too dry. Fuck you, old man, she rasped. Her mother, an arthritic knuckle of a woman, sobbed and buried her head in her husband's neck. Unmoved, implacable, the priest circled the bed until he stood near its head, his shadow falling over the wretched figure of the girl. From somewhere in the folds of his robe, he produced a flask of holy water. With one hand, he forced the girl's jaw open, his hard fingers digging into the papery skin of her cheeks, and with the other, poured the water in. The girl struggled, but Father Angus clapped his palm over her mouth and held fast. Her whole body spasmed, choking and coughing, arching off the bed with the strength of her resistance. Bridget watched and knew her soul was bound for hell, because in that moment, she wanted the girl to win. In her 9 years of life, she had never seen anyone defy Father Angus. It was wrong. Her uncle was a man of God, speaking in God's stead on earth, and to disobey him was to hate the true and the good. But the girl was so beautiful, and she fought so hard. Bridget wanted her to break the chains that held her, rise into the sky, and strike them all down in hellfire. The girl on the bed finally went limp, and the priest took his hand away. You can't have her, you son of a whore, said the demon inside the girl's body. She's mine. Thanks.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, the fact that that is your prologue and that's the way that you are kind of gripping your readers by the Achilles tendon and dragging them into this book is so stunning. I am reminded of why I couldn't put this one down once I started it.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so I have had some questions for you, Lindsay King-Miller, since I read this the first time, and I'm gonna get answer today.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna dive right in. I mean, first of all, obviously this is a book about possession.
Yeah.
Possession is an incredibly rich horror mine to delve into. I mean, there is so much material exploring the horror of possession, and you do it in a really new and interesting way in this book. You're not rehashing old tropes, you're bringing in really new questions about the nature of possession. And I'm curious about what makes this subject to you so ripe as an avenue to explore family dynamics?
So, I have had this idea in my head for a long time, and originally I had this thought that this would be a comedy. Like that I had this idea of like a gay mom who has to like who was like raised Catholic and has to like reconnect with her Catholic family when her daughter is possessed by a demon, and it would be, you know, kind of like wacky intergenerational um like opposites colliding with each other kind of comedy. Um, and then as soon as I started writing it, I was like, no, it can't really be that. That's not going to work. Because it was important to me. So I love possession horror. I love exorcism horror. I love the Exorcist. Um, I love all the Conjuring movies as kind of as thin as the subject material has sort of become by this point. Like I still go see them. I like them, but so much of the exorcism kind of subgenre is just like it's very Christian. It's very at the bottom. It sort of reifies like you have to believe in God, you have to believe in Jesus. Like the priest the is the ultimate authority, and you have to turn yourself over to, you have to sort of like let go and let God, right, in order to be saved. And I wanted to write a, an exorcism story that didn't do that. And I hope that's not too much of a spoiler. I don't think that's giving a lot away to say like this is an agnostic exorcism book. I very carefully avoided like having the book say anything one way or another about whether God exists. I wanted to write a possession story where the power of Christ does not compel you. And I realized that I couldn't do that and have it be like light and funny and silly. I had to kind of go um, go to a darker place, and it had to be kind of real about like what it's like to grow up with faith, or at least grow up in a family with faith, and then lose it or turn away from it, um, which is a heavy subject. And the specific stuff that I am talking about in this book, Bridget's childhood is not my childhood. I grew up Catholic, but I was not raised by the kind of Catholics that I'm depicting here. So I don't want, like, I want to say that so my dad doesn't get mad at me. This is not a book about my family. This is not a book about anything that I experienced as a child, um, but it is about, in some ways, it is about not having faith, being raised to have faith and not having faith.
I get to do a lot of that exact same caveat, that this is not about my family. And I do that caveat to them directly every time I have a book come out. I'll be like, listen, you're gonna read this book and you're gonna think this character's you, and it's not. And then I'll get a phone call from one of my sisters like a month later being like, okay, but are you sure? um, I think that,
I'm sure just like home, maybe you probably get some questions about just like home.
I get a lot of questions. Anyhow, we've established that neither of us is writing about our families. Please, no angry texts.
Yeah.
I think that the thing that you brought up. Oh wait, before I ask this question, before I get lost in how interesting this book and conversation are, our audience is invited, after you and I have talked, when I've had at least part of my fill. We're going to invite our audience who's watching right now to send us some questions of their own. And audience, I'm telling you right now, when you think of questions, as Lindsay and I are talking, write them down, because once I turn to you and say, hey, we are ready for your questions, you are going to lose every thought you've ever had in your mind. So please be thinking of your questions so we can make sure we get to them before we have to wrap up the event today. Write them down and have them ready for us at the end of our conversation. Okay, more importantly, back to the stuff I want to know. This thing you brought up about this being an agnostic possession novel is so on point and so fascinating, and makes this book so queer, because you spend a lot of time dwelling in questions and uncertainty in this book. And possession narratives really are, I think a lot of the catharsis of them is about locating certainty. There's so often doubt as horror in possession novels, and the doubt is usually doubt of faith, right? It's, the young priest questioning whether or not he actually is connected to a higher power that can save the day. And you use doubt in a really different way in this book. What interests you about the horror and fear of doubt, especially from the perspective that you're writing in, which is the perspective of a parent?
Oh, that's such a good question. I do think so. So I was raised Catholic. I am no longer Catholic. I kind of turned away from the religion I was raised in as a teenager. And then during maybe like the first really hard time in my adult life, I thought about going back to it. And I realized that I couldn't, that I was not able to change my mind and decide that I believed again. I had always sort of thought in the back of my mind that that was a door that went both directions, and that I could walk through it again if I wanted to. And I found that I couldn't, that believing was not a choice that I got to make. And that I don't anymore. And that was actually really scary. That was, um, I feel, I do feel a kind of envy for people who have that kind of, relationship with a higher power, for people who have that that sense of spirituality in, whatever form it takes. Because I really, there have definitely been times when I have wished I had that, and I just, it's not it's not there for me. So that was part of it. That was part of what was going on in this book, I think, was really digging down into what does it mean to not believe? What does it mean to feel like, and I don't want to make it sound like too, I'm not trying to sound like too goth about it, but like, what does it mean to feel like you're alone in in the universe in spiritual terms? And then of course the other thing, again, I this was going to be a funny book, I swear. That was my intention. But then I started writing about parenthood, and I was thinking about, I am a parent. I have two kids, and I was thinking about just how do you know that you're doing the right thing? How do you know in extreme circumstances, in circumstances that no one else has been through, how do you know that what you're doing for your child is right and isn't going to end up hurting them worse in the long run? Because you can screw up really bad with the absolute best of intentions. And that is, something that I definitely think about a lot and feel worried about. And, you know, I don't I don't have, and I don't think I'll ever have that sense that I can give it up to a higher power, right? Or that I can, trust that God is looking out for my kids. Like, I feel, whether this is true in the grand scheme of things or not, I feel like it's all down to me. And if I fuck up, then it's real bad. So a lot of, those fears and anxieties made their way into this book as well. So what I said, I kind of surprised myself by saying this at my book launch on Friday, but this book is not at all about my childhood, but it's kind of about my parenthood.
That makes total sense and it's so legible to me in reading this. I am on the, first couple of steps of the trying to get into the parenthood journey here. And I'm trying, as someone who's very invested in like self work and self healing, I'm trying to do some of the work ahead of time that I know needs doing, so that when I find out about the things I didn't know later, I'll have like bandwidth to address them,
Yeah.
hopefully. And this is one of the things that I'm spending a lot of time sitting with right now, is that pure, unadulterated, petrifying terror of knowing that you can do things wrong in a permanent way. Um, I spend a lot of time hanging out with babies, and this thing happens in my mind that people I know who have babies assure me goes away eventually, where I'll be holding the baby and something inside of me will just go, "Hey, don't drop the baby." And I'm like, I wasn't dropping the baby. And the thing in my mind goes, "Hey, don't drop the baby." And it's just so intense. And parenting feels like signing up for a lifetime of that. Um, and you capture in this book so incredibly like what happens when you drop the baby, because babies make a project of trying to get dropped, and then they turn into teenagers who make a project of trying to get dropped, and that's what they need, that's their whole deal. And you capture so incredibly here the sense of knowing that bad things will happen to your child. um, and I have a note here about the the way you capture, and I really want to know, I mean, you touched on this a little bit, but I think there's more here. What what makes you want to write about the intrinsic transformative horror of watching someone grow up? Because it's not just the what if you do things wrong, you also really capture how it feels to watch someone go from being a little critter to being a person, and how frightening that is, even
It's
before
so,
the demon.
it is. I mean, it is. It's so scary. It's so, when you realize, and I'm at this point now where I'm starting to realize that my kids have problems and have concerns and have fears and hopes, and there are things going on inside them that I will never understand. And when they're really little, you understand what's going on for them, and there's just kind of a list of things that can be going on for a very small baby, and you just try all of them until something works. um but then they get older and they're their own people, and they have complicated thoughts and feelings, and you don't always understand them, and it is scary. And even just like the little everyday, disappointments and frustrations and heartaches of being a person, um, are so frightening. And looking into the future and realizing they are only going to become more independent and more opaque to me. That the list of things that I don't know about my kids will only grow from here. Um, and that's overwhelming, and that's scary. And I, I've loved horror all my life. Um, I wrote, some like scary short stories when I was a kid, but then I sort of went in a different direction as a writer for a fairly long time, like into my early adulthood. And I didn't really start writing horror again until my oldest child was born. And then I started writing some short stories again, started writing some scary short stories. And a lot of the stuff, and not everything that I write is about parenting, but I feel like it's connected anyway. Like it's all there. It's just scary. And to me, the way one of the main ways that I deal with things that are scary is writing about it and seeing if I can make it even worse, which is normal. Um,
You succeeded. This book, and I mean this is the highest compliments, this book just keeps getting worse and worse the more you read it, in a very delicious way. And it feels, it made me feel bad inside.
I'm sorry, and also thank you.
mentally.
That
Yeah,
means a lot to me.
no, that's exactly what I needed. Okay, I'm gonna pivot us away from parenting because I have been finding myself doing the insufferable aspiring parent thing of just like getting too focused on this topic when I'm talking to someone who thinks deeply about it. Um, there are other things in this book that you accomplish that I very rarely seen accomplished on the page. One of them is you successfully write a very disorienting experience of physical space. No spoilers, but there is an extended sequence in which a house doesn't make sense. That is, it's very disorienting to read, but it's not um, self-indulgently confusing. I wasn't reading it going, I could be reading any collection of words on a page right now. It makes sense in its disorientation. And I want to know how you go about using physical space in your work to mirror spiritual and emotional space, because I think you do that a lot in this book.
Thank you. I did definitely, sorry for the weird camera. I needed to go plug
I
my
liked
phone
the
in for a
tour.
second. Um, so I thank you for saying that because that is something that I definitely feel is not a strength of mine as a writer, is like a sense of physical space. Um, it's something that I find challenging, but I did really want to ground this. Like I wanted this to be, it's not a haunted house book, but the house is part of it. Um, the house is connected to this family and to the way that this family is haunted. Um, so I did, and so this is one thing that I did steal a lot from real life. The childhood in the book is not my childhood. The story of Bridget's, um, you know, family is not my story. The house is my grandmother's house, though. I did just pretty much take my grandma's house and put it in this book because it was just, because it's an old, classic Denver house. And I love it. And in the way that I do, because I'm a horror writer, I like to take things that I love and make them unknowable and horrifying. Um, so that's what I did. So I think to the extent that that is effective, I think it's probably in large part because I was starting with a physical space that I do know very well, and then taking it and twisting it and trying to make it, uncanny and confusing.
That sense of familiarity really comes through. There's there's an author who I love who has a tendency to write location specific books where you can tell that what he did is he went to that location on vacation for a week. And so he's got like a book set in San Francisco. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and everyone in it is like going and hanging out in Chinatown in order to look at, baubles, and then crossing the Golden Gate Bridge, and then going to visit Alcatraz. And it's kind of like, okay, this is cute, but like you clearly don't know this place at all. And I had such an opposite emotion reading This Is My Body and feeling, oh, you as an author know what the carpet smells like in this house. There's just this so much intense sense memory that you get across to the reader in a really fascinating way. Um, Something else that you get across to the reader that I felt very much in my body in a horrible way while I was reading this is that your approach to interpersonal violence is so informed. And one of the things that I loved about it is that you really get across the way physical fights, are grueling. They're not, the way that it feels to watch them. Watching a well choreographed fight on film is exhilarating, and you get this kind of like whip crack sense of connection in violence. But the reality of being in a fight is that it's grueling. It lasts for fuck ever. It's miserable. It's messy, and a lot of it is the process of trying to get away from the fight. And you approach that so well. There's one fight that I cannot go into detail on because it will spoil the entire book, but I remember reading it and going, I've been in this fight. Um, how do you go about making that sense of grueling violence come across without making it grueling to read? Because reading it is still extremely compelling.
That's a super interesting question. That's a super interesting question because uh, I I don't have a good answer for that because, and I truly have never been in a fight, really. I got in a slap fight with another girl walking home from school in like the fourth grade, and that's literally it as far
Did
as
you win?
physical violence goes. No, my mom yelled out her window at us, and we.
Oh, the referee always gets involved at the worst
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
Well, I
Um,
don't know that I agree that you've never been in a fight because you have kids. And whether you give birth to children with your body or not, the process of experiencing their physical torments feels very similar to being in a fight.
that is actually that's a good point. There's a lot. I feel like there's a lot to be said about the physical like exhaustion and just the overwhelming physicality of being a parent. And as somebody, so I did not give birth to my children. My partner gave birth to them. My partner nursed them. So those, when you think about the kind of body horror aspect of parenthood, those are the big things that you mostly think of. But there is like just overwhelming physical demands, especially when they're little. But honestly, like even still, that are separate from like pregnancy and birth, just caring for a very small person is intensely physical. And like my kids both went through a biting phase. um there's and I was a nanny for a while in college, and the child I nannied for also had a biting phase. So I've
Oh
been
no.
busy a lot in my life now
Yeah,
that
I was gonna say maybe you've just got secret gummy bear arms.
yeah, I've probably rocked more teeth marks than a lot of people. Um,
Yeah, you've been in combat.
yeah, so I don't know. I didn't really think about that connection, but I do think that's probably there somewhere.
That sounds like, I mean, that experience that you're describing sounds very much like the interpersonal violence that you write. And children are interpersonally violent. They just are. They're again little critters for a while, and they don't want to participate in a social contract that says you don't get to slap me for fun. All right. I'm going to remind our viewers right now that they will be invited very shortly here to ask questions directly. Um, I'm going to float one more question to Lindsay before I ask our audience for questions, and they will be able to send those over to us. And when you send them in, I will go ahead and read them out from the chat.
And I
So
am
that
going
we,
to try again to see if I can connect to the Zoom on my computer because my phone is going to die and I can't get it to
oh,
charge.
not
So
ideal. Okay.
let's see.
Well,
I'm trying to get back in on my computer, so we'll see how that goes.
okay, while you're getting that queued up, I'm going to float you my last question for this part, which is that I'm very interested. We've been talking about the physical violence of your narrative, we've been talking about the emotional violence of your narrative, and the two are in no way separate, especially when we look at Bridget's childhood. How do you use physical and emotional violence in a connected way in order to specifically antagonize the reader and again make them feel so bad inside?
Um, Thank you. Thank you. That really that means so much to me, genuinely. Um, How do you do it? I do think a lot about like the way that emotions feel physically, and like I have anxiety. I've done a lot of therapy, so I've spent a lot of time thinking about, this is where emotions show up in my body. Um, this is how, this is how my stomach feels when I'm scared. This is how my hands feel when I'm panicking. And so I think a lot of that shows up in the writing. Um, yeah, I also, I guess, I don't know. I think it comes back, I don't have like a real specific craft answer for this or like a technique so much as just I try to really like get in the headspace of being being afraid, being overwhelmed. And it's a very accessible frame of mind for me. Because like I said, I have clinical anxiety, and this is for some reason, this is a coping mechanism of mine. So um, it more than anything else, I'm just kind of trying to write, this is what it's like for me. This is this is how I feel when I think about these kinds of things. Um, when I think about, for this book, it's something happening to my child, something happening that uh, trying to help and making it worse. Um, and then kind of taking those and blowing them up, making them bigger. Clay McLeod Chapman, who is a master of the feel bad book, um, I was on a panel with him, I think last year, and he made an offhand comment that I just loved. And I wrote it down and I've quoted it 100 times since then. He said, horror is opera, it's an emotional highlighter. Um, so it's kind of just how can I take these things that I already feel and I already experience and just make them bigger and louder and more dramatic and worse, and then just give it to you and run away. And now it's your problem.
Clay, Clay is fantastic. That man has got more energy in his pinky finger than I think I've ever had in my entire life. I
Oh
don't
my
know how
God.
he does it.
I saw
Um,
him read at StokerCon this year, and I was just looking around the room and just watching people just cry, just like publicly weep. It was
Incredible.
intense.
Yeah. Um, I um I was watching a video from a social worker whose work I really love online the other day, and they were talking about emotional self-escalation, which is I had never heard that term before, and it like unlocked something in me. I became activated, and it's this thing where we'll like tell ourselves a story in a way that activates our emotions and exposes us to really frightening emotions based on unreality. So, I do this all the fucking time. My poor sainted partner will say something normal, and I'll go, what if that thing that they said means that they are deeply unhappy in our relationship and in a way that I can't fix? And then my little walnut of a brain will go, sounds true. I think that's probably true. What do we feel about it? And what you're describing in terms of dialing up your own experiences and then handing that to the reader sounds like you said this very funny joke of I'm not about to tell you any interesting craft tools, and then you named like 20 of them in a row. And this is one, which is taking emotional self-escalation, taking the experience of giving yourself a bad feeling based on something that didn't happen, and then using that for story instead of for self-torture, which is what I like to do with it. Um, is just brilliant. And I think you named another tool of craft here, which is self-knowledge. A lot of people don't know what emotions feel like in their body. They are ironically too scared to interrogate where fear lives in them physically. And as horror authors, we have the opportunity to say, you're going to find out where fear lives in your body right now, and I'm going to make you find that out. So bringing your therapeutic process of self-knowledge into your work is so brilliant. I really love it. Okay, chat, it's time. Drop your questions for Lindsay in the comments. Our wonderful host from Book Loft will then present them to us. And we've got like at least 10 minutes left. So you've got a little bit of time, but don't be shy because those 10 minutes are linear and will end. And also, we may have a technical cutoff if Lindsay's phone decides that we're finished talking, which, by the way, has happened to me during an Instagram live that I was doing with my friend Victoria, who hosts some really incredible conversations and interviews about writing and craft. And I was so excited to do this. And we got 20 minutes into my phone died. I didn't even notice it was getting low on battery. So, Lindsay, you're more responsible than me here. While
I
we're
tried,
waiting,
but I can't. Yeah, I'm still trying to get into the Zoom on my computer, but I have to get a new laptop. I have to do it.
today's the day. Today's the day that you got to make the decision. It comes
Yeah,
for us all.
yeah.
While we're
I did just get the very low battery notification from my phone, so I do think it's gonna die in the next like 5 minutes or so. And I am
let's
so sorry about that.
let's run out the clock. Why
Yeah.
not? This is also something that Grady Hendrix does really well in his work is logistical horror of things like someone's got a phone that's saying very low battery and it's their only light source.
Ooh,
Or he does really good economic horror where he'll be like, you've got $10 and in order to get away from the killer, you really need $12, but you don't have it. It's just so you're in that and our audience is in it with us. While we
yeah,
wait for them to drop their questions and while we wait for your phone to die, I've got lightning rounds for you.
let's do it.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, what scares you to write?
Anything having to do with harm to children. I still haven't like gone straight into the heart of that fear yet. I wrote around the edges of it and This Is My Body, but there's stuff that I can't do.
Oh, that's a good one. What is a detail in this book that you hope people notice?
Hmm. That's a good question. I guess I hope that people from Denver notice all of the Denver stuff because I love I love this city and uh wanted to wanted to kind of make it feel alive and a little bit spooky um in the way that it is.
You dovetailed so perfectly into my next lightning round question, which is aside from the airport, what is the scariest thing about Denver?
You should know, first of all, regarding the airport, that I have a giant tattoo of Lucifer on my back. Um,
That is the
I
scariest thing I've learned about you today.
I love Lucifer. I'm obsessed. For those of you who don't know, Lucifer is a giant blue sculpture of a horse outside the Denver airport. Its actual title is Mustang, but everybody calls it Lucifer because it's a blue horse and its eyes burn with the red light of hellfire. And also it killed its creator. And it's extremely, extremely cursed.
Makes
Other
total
than
sense to me
Lucifer,
that you worship Lucifer because it's either worship him or die under his hooves.
exactly, exactly. I have chosen my side
Mhm.
in the Human Horse Uprising. Aside from Lucifer, the scariest thing in Denver is Lakeside Amusement Park. It is over 100 years old. Most of the rides are woefully under-maintained, falling apart. Like, oh my gosh, they look so cursed. It was creepy when I was a kid, and nothing has been improved or renovated in the past 30 years. There's a little mention of it in the book, Blink and You'll Miss It, but one day I'm going to write a whole book set there because it's deeply terrifying. My brother worked there for several summers and he knows where a lot of things are buried. I don't
Oh boy.
know any specific bodies, but a lot of things are buried under
Petrifying.
Lakeside Amusement Park.
I'm hard no on roller coasters of any kind, and this just sounds so terrifying. Lindsay, I'm seeing two of you. Are we we
There
are
are
successful? Do we want to swap our mutes so we don't get two voices?
Okay, can you
Here
hear
you
me?
are. You sound great.
I
You're
did.
in landscape.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And my computer
Excellent.
has battery for days, so we can keep chatting if we want to. Oh
Okay,
my gosh,
great.
it's magical.
Well done. I've got one more lightning round
My
question
phone
for
was at
you.
2% battery under the wire.
Oh man, Indiana Jones getting the hat from under the door.
Yes, beautiful.
Okay, my final lightning round question for you, which we can stretch out a little bit, although I am going to be wrapping us up in a few minutes here. And again, the live comments under the YouTube video is where people can drop their questions. And also, if you don't get to drop your question in there in time, it looks like you will be able to drop your questions and comments under the video, and we can return to those in the future and engage with them or not engage with them, depending on if we feel like it. So, Lindsay, last one. What do you wish more people understood about horror?
I think one of the thing that frustrates me most that people say who don't like horror is that they don't like horror because people make bad choices. You hear this criticism a lot, slasher movies, everyone in slasher movies is stupid. They shouldn't go down to the basement. They shouldn't let their phone batteries die. Ha ha. Um, and I I always want to be like, you've never made a bad decision under stress. You've never like almost ruined a relationship because you got a little too hungry and said some things you didn't mean. Um,
This is too real.
I think that I think that horror runs on bad choices made for good reasons, or at least reasons that seem good or seem unavoidable at the time. And that's definitely what I'm interested in writing about is figuring out where to apply pressure to a character so that they will do the worst possible thing while feeling like there's nothing else that they could have done. And that's really what I tried to do in This Is My Body. Bridget definitely makes a lot of bad calls and is just constantly making things worse for herself while trying to make them better. And that to me is where the story is. That's where the horror is, certainly. But I almost think any interesting narrative, you've got to have, if everybody does everything perfectly, then there's no story. You got to have somebody making a bad call and experiencing probably outsized consequences for it. A bad choice that rebounds on you in ways that you never could have imagined. That's not all horror, but I think that's what's at the heart of most of the horror that I really love.
I'm so glad that I asked you this specific question because this is like the juiciest, best answer. I teach a course on horror and sensory experience, horror in the body. And one of the things that I do when I'm setting up this course, it's an iterative course that invites people. It's like you're going to write a paragraph and we're going to figure out how to seed more horror in there. And when I start us out, one of the things I do is walk through the impulses we have to resist in ourselves when we're writing scary work. And chief among those is intellectualization. We, as monkeys, find so much safety in intellect. And so when people approach a work of horror and say, well, I would have done everything right in that and nothing bad would have happened to me, I can recognize that what they're really doing is self-soothing and saying, I'm safe because I'm smart, I have a big brain, and so bad things won't happen to me.
Right.
But it's also just not true. I mean, sometimes we make the bad decision because we're too hungry. For me, if the room's like 3 degrees too hot, my decision making evaporates. And I the worst fight I ever got into with my best friend was because we were both wearing boots and wool socks on an 85-degree day. It was just it was
No,
just the
no, that's
best.
awful though.
Oh, it was really bad. Um, we make decisions because of brain don't work good in slightly adverse circumstance, or we make bad decisions because we feel it's necessary. The other night, someone outside of my building was screaming at the top of their lungs in the street, pitch dark outside. And my partner was sick, and I was like, well, my choices are to ignore this or to go outside alone in the dark to try and see if this person needs help. And if I'm using horror fan logic, I'm not going out there, but I'm
Right.
not. I'm using member of a community logic. So
Right.
I'm gonna do the risky thing because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
Um, and that your perspective on that intellectualization that people do is so nourishing for me, and I could not agree with you more. All
I
right.
I'm really interested in the class that you're talking about. I always come back to I'm obsessed with Pet Sematary. I think Pet Sematary is one of the greatest horror novels ever written. And one of the things that I love about it is that Louis Creed just does not make the right choice ever, not one time in that whole book. He, at the beginning of the book, this like dying man dying in his office is like, I just want, my dying wish is for you to do one smart thing and not go into the scary evil woods. That's all I want. And he's like, I absolutely am not going to do that. I am going to go into the scary evil woods immediately, and it's just gonna get worse from there. And I, like I make fun of it a lot because when you take a step back from that plot, it's just hilarious um how many bad choices he makes. But it's also, when you're reading the book, it you can feel how much he doesn't see any other path available. He feels like he's doing the only thing that he can do. Um, every time he just like ruins everything. And I love that. I think that's so scary fundamentally, is understanding what kind of pressure it would take to make you do the worst possible thing.
Yes. Yeah, that pressure is it is where, to me, the interest in narrative lies, which some readers hate because they'll be like, hang on a minute, why are these characters um constantly fucking up? And it's like, well, that's what's fun for me.
Right, right.
Okay, Lindsay, I'm going to wrap us up. I am going to remind our viewers who are going to be watching this in the future that they can drop comments and questions in the comments to this video. They can also go to Book Loft or their favorite local independent bookseller to pick up their copy of This Is My Body. Book Loft has got signed copies, which is always a thrill. You can also, readers, request This Is My Body from your local library. Even if you've already purchased your copy from Bookloft, which you should, if you go to your local library and request it, your library is very likely to purchase a copy to have in stock, which means that other people will be able to read this book while also supporting their local library. We love libraries and we want them to live forever. So please consider doing both.
I'm at a library now as
Woo!
we speak.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for joining us. I had such a great time listening to you both. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for bearing with like all the technical issues on my end too. Normally it's more on my end, but I completely understand. And thank you again to our viewers. I do see we still have some active viewers, like Sarah said. If you would like to leave a comment, I'll make sure it gets to the authors. We have signed copies of This Is My Body at the store now. If you're not local, you can go to bookloft.com and place an order. And just leave in your order comments you want a signed copy. I will make sure it gets to you.
I
Also,
bet you can also pre-order copies of Spread Me by Sarah Gailey, which is a spectacular book that I was so thrilled to get to read early. It comes out next month, if I'm not mistaken. Phenomenal, very gross, very also some questionable decision making on display. Questionable decision making under pressure is a factor. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I think that you will love it, so you should order it.
agreed, yeah. And if like I said, like if you can get This Is My Body at the store, and then September 25th, if you want to talk more with Sarah Gailey, they will be at the store at 7 p.m. on September 25th. And you can come and meet them and say hi. We're extremely excited for that one as well.
Please do come say hi. I love getting to chat with people, and it's a lot more fun than empty chairs. So please come out. And I can't wait.
Thank you again, folks, for joining. And I will end us there. You folks have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the Book Loft. Thank you to Sarah Gailey. This was really fun. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Yeah, you too.
everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.